So now that you've thought about installation art and performance art, there's a last section I want to get to in this module. And that is the one that looks at what the author refers to as Robert Bella's idea of civil religion. I want to refine that definition that's in the book for the purpose of understanding religious studies scholarship. Robert Bella was not a religion scholar. He was, in fact, or is, a sociologist. And what he constructed in his idea of civil religion ultimately talks about religion as evolutionary. By evolutionary, he meant that just about anything people had done in earlier times, indigenous spirituality, for example, earth-based religions, was to be considered primitive. And so civil religion is something that came later along with nations. Now, for the most part, religious studies scholars really avoid his language of civil religion, but it was groundbreaking, and it did help to bring forward the idea of what we talk about, what we do in our national spaces. There are things that happen. So instead of that language that he began with as he broke through the idea of how we talk about religion, we now tend to use the phrase public religion. The aim is to analyze religion in public spaces of our lives, both in those public spaces and as expressed in our nation. So those are the two ways. Let me talk about them a little bit more. First of all, there is religion in our public spaces. The United States has many examples of this. We have a legal structure here that defines freedom of religion, and freedom of religion means that the government cannot establish a state religion. Religion can be, we know, can be discussed, can become part of our lives, but it is not controlled by the government. However, in another country, say Saudi Arabia, religion is very strictly controlled by the government, and public religion has some totally different meanings. Our view of nation is the second way that we think about public religion. Citizenship itself becomes a kind of religious belief. Think about what this means. Most people in the United States will not say my country right or wrong, but will experience anger if the country is not living up to its ideals and values as they understand these. They will ask the question, why doesn't my country live up to its ideals? So our belief in our nation is not a religion as such, but has some of the same dimensions of belief, action, trust, with a kind of spirituality that ties it all together, and a kind of operative theology. When we talk about our nation, we mean, however you fill in those blanks. The very growth of nationalism from the late 19th century throughout the 20th century to the present around the world brings this sense of patriotism and an identity as a person who lives in a nation. So think of prayer before a school football game. While there's freedom of religion, I don't know of too many football teams in schools who do not pray, even if it's a public school. It doesn't mean that the state, if it is a state school or public school, that the state is imposing religion. But it does mean that people have freedom to express their religious belief. Think of the idea of a Pledge of Allegiance. Think of the many levels of the meaning of the symbol of the flag. The flag, any nation's flag, doesn't have a single meaning to all people. Depending on the person, that symbol can have a great many meanings. Secondly, we can also think about, in this same vein, we can also think about how public religion opens us to thinking about other symbols of nation and how complicated these meanings can be. So, in the United States, the figure of Christopher Columbus, 1492, can be very controversial depending on who's being asked. So, if you ask Native Americans, they will not see him as a hero. If you ask Italian Americans, they will claim him as their own personal hero. Columbus, in each case, represents something very different, one positive, one destructive, to two different groups. So an Italian American community may have Christopher Columbus parades. A Native American community will not have that parade and will in fact change the name of it and call it Native Heritage Day during the day in October when Christopher Columbus is typically celebrated. All of these ideas bring us to our next field work. I want you to look around for a national monument of some kind. It does not matter where you are in the country or the world. Find a monument that has meaning to the people of that country. Take a photo or several, and then the narrative I want you to write to explain the monument, this monument, I want you to explain it in those two ways. Does it have a negative aspect? Does it have a positive aspect? That is your assignment. Look on Blackboard to find out if you're going to put this photo or sets of photos on Flipgrid or on Google Docs. I'm not quite sure right now, so I'll know by the time I have it all entered online. Following that, there will be a quiz, and then we are on to Module 5.